We need you. We need your youth. We need your strength. We need your idealism to help us make right that which is wrong.
That, of course, is President Ronald Reagan 1981 giving the commencement address at Notre Dame University. So why are we showing you that? Because the last time Republicans won voters, young voters, were in the 1984 and 1988 election cycles. Those students are now in their 50s, and there's a new report that says young people cannot stand Republicans. And I'm only slightly exaggerating here. In an extensive 95-page study titled Grand Old Party for a Brand New Generation, the College Republican National Committee acknowledges their party is driving away young voters in droves. This is not entirely surprising. You only have to look at the past two presidential elections to notice the generation gap. President Obama won 60% of the youth vote in 2012. In 2008, he won 66% of that demographic. What makes this so stunning is that the College Republican National Committee went out and did the work and plopped down a significant investment for an actual in-depth commission study of 800 registered voters under 30 and 6 focus groups to discover that, and I'm quoting, "Our focus on taxation and business issues has left many young voters thinking they will only reap the benefits of Republican policies if they become wealthy or rise to the top of a big business. We've become the party that will pat you on your back when you make it, but won't offer a hand to help you get there." Of course, the problem for Republicans here is that that is a largely an accurate assessment of the party's domestic policy priorities. For instance, 54% of young voters saying taxes should go up on the wealthy, as opposed to just 3% who think taxes should be cut for the wealthy. Of course, this cohort voted overwhelmingly for the presidential candidate who pledged to raise taxes on the wealthy over the presidential candidate who vowed to cut their taxes. In other words, that is not a branding problem. That is a genuine rejection of the party's core unifying economic agenda. It gets worse. According to the study, Latino voters tend to think the GOP couldn't care less about them. And when asked what words came to mind when young voters heard the phrase Republican Party, here are the common responses: closed-minded, racist, rigid, old-fashioned. All in all, brutal. The Republican Party doesn't need a new coat of paint so much as it seems to need a complete gut rehab. Joining me now is Alex Smith, National Chair of the College Republican National Committee. And Alex, in the beginning of this report, you talk about 3 sets of theories about what went wrong in the last election between Republicans and young voters. Who think it was a technology problem in terms of how it was administered, people who think that it is a branding problem, and people who think it's a substance policy problem. What camp are you in?
Our report, and thanks so much for having us on tonight, our report posits that branding is the problem for the Republican Party in the past and something that we can fix going forward.
Okay, so, but here is why I disagree with that. And I understand in some ways you are sort of institutionally required to say that. But let's talk about raising taxes on the wealthy. That is a very central economic platform plank of the Republican Party. It was a central message of Mitt Romney, and it's wildly unpopular among this age cohort. That doesn't seem to me a branding problem. That just seems like young voters just disagree with this very fundamental part of what the party believes in.
In the same section on taxes, though, that you're quoting, younger voters viewed cutting taxes on small businesses as something that would promote economic growth and jobs for them in the future.
But everyone thinks that. That's like saying that you like apple pie or that you think, criminals should go to jail. Like, everyone loves to cut taxes for small businesses.
Well, the problem is that younger voters didn't necessarily connect those making over $250,000 a year as being small business owners. That in a lot of ways, these terms of wealthy and different income levels were conflated to mean that taxes should go up on the wealthy, when in fact a lot of the taxes that the president were proposing were actually taxes that were going to go up on small business owners.
Right, but of course those two groups are the same. Those two groups are often the same thing, right? I mean, there are some small business owners who are quite wealthy.
Well, we're looking at this from a branding perspective. We're looking at this from how younger voters view the Republican Party, how they view the policies we espouse, and in general, they favor cutting taxes on small businesses. They view that as something that benefits them economically in terms of job growth and economic growth. Moreover, our study found is that young people are incredibly entrepreneurial, particularly among minority participants in the surveys that we examined. So we think that in terms of fighting for what we believe in as a party, the Republican Party has a natural advantage in talking about these kinds of issues.
But here's my question about the small business. part of this, right? It's not like Mitt Romney didn't talk about small businesses. It's all he talked about. I mean, I covered the whole campaign. I hosted a television show. We talked all the time about Mitt Romney talking about small businesses, how Barack Obama wants to raise taxes on small businesses, how actually his tax cut for the top 1% or the top 5% was going to be a tax cut for small businesses. So if it's a branding problem, why wasn't Mitt Romney's absolute repeated ad nauseum emphasis on small businesses not enough to lodge in the minds of the kinds of young voters you were talking to?
Well, another part of this story, Chris, is that young voters just often didn't feel like the Romney campaign or Republicans were speaking to them, and that's a huge problem. The youth vote is only increasing as a percentage of the total votes in this country. It's grown by 1 percentage point every presidential election for the past 4 presidential elections in a row. So from 16% in 2000 to 19% in 2012. Moreover, if the voting demographic had started at age 30 this election, Governor Romney would be president today.
Right. It was young voters that delivered the margin. Can I?
Sure, and what we think is, and what our report talks about, particularly when it comes to technology and the media through which we communicate our ideas to younger voters, is that oftentimes younger voters didn't feel like we were actually communicating with them. And I think that's a great opportunity for us.
Let me ask you this question, a final question, and quickly. You know, the college Republicans have this reputation on campuses, if you've gone to a campus, the College Republican chapter, which is often this kind of like trolling sort of thing where they make fun of the liberals on campus. This is the Berkeley College Republican Affirmative Action Bake Sale, which is something that's been repeated in a lot of campuses where if you're white, you pay more than if you're Asian or Latino and black, and it's meant to lampoon the ridiculation of any kind of racial preferences. And I wonder, when you look at that, if you're talking about branding, is that the kind of thing that is part of what contributes to the way that young people think about the Republican Party?
Well, listen, I have to tell you, we released this report this morning. Obviously, it was teased last night in the Politico article that you mentioned before. I have gotten countless messages from our chapter chairs and from our state chairs across the country who said, thank you, this is what we needed. These are the kind of ideas that we can work with. And they are terribly excited. They see the opportunities in this report, and they see real room for growth, and that these are incredibly workable solutions. We at the CRNC are going to support them.
That was an incredibly deft non-answer, and I'm interpreting that as Alex Smith bringing the hammer down on affirmative action bake sales at chapters across the country. Alex Smith, National Chair of the College